The 1961 Algiers Putsch, for those who don't know, was a failed coup d'etat intended to force French President Charles de Gaulle not to abandon French Algeria, the resident European community, and pro-French Algerians. It was organized in French Algeria by retired generals Chalais, Johann Zeller, and Raoul Salan. It took place from the afternoon of the 21st of April to the 26th in 1961 in the midst of the Algerian War, and would bring France on the brink of civil war, according to several sources. The organizers of the putsch were opposed to the secret negotiations that the French Prime Minister Michel Debre's government had started with the anti-colonialist National Liberation Front, or FLN. General Salan had stated that he joined the coup without concerning himself with its technical planning. However, it has always been considered a four-man coup d'etat, and they were primarily just against the FLN and any form of peace process. The coup was to come in two phases, one being an assertion of control in French Algeria's major cities, being Algiers, Oran, and Constantine. The metropolitan operation would be led by Colonel Antoine Argaud, with French paratroopers descending on strategic airfields. The commanders in Oran and Constantine, however, would refuse to follow Chalais' demand that they join the coup, and at the same time, information about the metropolitan phase came out to Prime Minister Debre's attention through the intelligence services. And on April 22nd, all flights and landings were forbidden in Parisian airfields, and an order was given to the army to resist the coup by all means, and the following day, President de Gaulle would make a famous speech on television dressed in his World War II uniform, ordering the French people and military to help him, and the coup would fail as the army stood with de Gaulle. But what if, in an alternate timeline, the coup had been successful? First, conditions that would need to be changed would of course be if the lower enlisted troops in the French army had supported the putsch, because in our timeline, French units would refuse en masse to follow orders of officers who supported the coup against de Gaulle. Also, this would only happen if France didn't recently get transistor radios, which could transmit de Gaulle's call to oppose the coup all across the country very fast. Now, will France have a civil war as a result of a successful putsch, as several historians believe would have happened? Honestly, that's more difficult to answer than you might think. In our timeline, most of the French population opposed the putsch and effectively rallied due to transistor radios. In this timeline, the population is still going to be against the new government once it's in power, and support from the army is going to wither away pretty fast as civil resistance increases. On the effects of the Algerian War, the Putsch government is of course going to be taking a very hardline stance against the FLN and the idea of independence, which, like I said before, will be very unpopular with the French public and in France itself. However, the French settler population in Algeria, as well as the pro-French Algerians, will be strongly supportive of the new regime. This government in France is going to go full gloves off when it comes to the war in Algeria, as it's made up of fierce hardliners. However, civil resistance will strongly disrupt logistics. Other aspects to the war that will be changed will be that now that France is off the negotiating table, the Evian Accords and any de-escalation or ceasefire movements between France and the FLN are absolutely gone. On the positive front, however, the Pied Noir and Muslim communities won't engage in their own civil war in Algeria, and so ethnic cleansing isn't going to happen too much on that front, and the OAS won't be as powerful or won't be doing terror attacks in France, at least not now. Worldviews of the French coup are definitely going to be shock and mass concern. France is essentially a dictatorship now, and NATO won't be too happy with how things went down. The Soviets and Communist bloc will of course be very happy as a Western country is a dictatorship now, and they can further discredit NATO in the Third World and can support communist insurgency groups within France. Now, in my view, France is going to witness a counter-coup pretty fast against the existing junta. Now, I feel like in a matter of months, the regime is toppled by civil resistance and the French military in Paris. With this, the previous government is restored. However, one element that would probably be heavily involved in toppling the junta would be the communists, which presents its own unpredictable issues that I can't even begin to tackle in this video. Regarding the Algerian War, this is where the OAS is formed, but it'll be a lot weaker than in our timeline as the counter-coup arrested many who would have led the organization. However, the Pied Noir community is still going to be pretty angry at French abandonment and be very violent towards pretty much everyone. The war would probably last perhaps another year maximum, But other than that, the main changes in this timeline is that France's internal stability is an absolute mess of a crap show. And this is all just one possible scenario. What do you think would have happened had the 1961 putsch been successful? Write in the comments, and thank you for watching.